Well, hello again, gang, and welcome to this episode of the Ministry Show. We're going to recap these 5 habits that we've been talking about: recruit, train, place, support, monitor. And some of you are going, well, it's about time. You know, we could go on even longer on these, but what we want you to understand is that these 5 habits, or fundamentals, disciplines, habits, whatever your word for them is, they work synergistically to help you create a thriving ministry. But here's the secret sauce, and that's what we're going to talk about today. Nobody can be an A player in all 5 of those habits. It's literally impossible. The bottom line is this: it's amazing how quickly you can advance and how much more you can get done if you move from doing all 5 of those things to leading people who are doing all 5 of those. And so the secret sauce is leading a team that makes sure that all 5 of these habits, these disciplines, these fundamentals are occurring simultaneously in your ministry. Now, I can speak not only from personal experience, but for hundreds of pastors that I've coached over the years, and how to implement these 5 disciplines, these 5 fundamentals, these 5 what I like to call habits, that's taken their ministry trajectory from being flat to up and to the right. And it happens every single time. So we're going to talk about leadership, how you're judged by your ministry, you're evaluated by the outcome, how to get better, so on. So you can see the outline there. But the cool thing is that the leadership is the secret sauce, right, Pam?
It is, yeah. And it only seems like a miracle when that synergy between those 5 habits that we've talked about, when everything starts to work together, it just starts to spiral upwards. And you just see the benefits.
Yeah.
It looks like a miracle, but people have worked hard to get there.
You know, and I can tell you this, it absolutely feels like a miracle too.
It does.
But it doesn't happen right away.
No.
You actually do have to make them habits, and then find people that can help you. You and I are going to be judged by our ministry. Matter of fact, I would tell you, you're already being judged by your ministry. You've heard it said that in church work, we got 100 or 1,000 bosses. Well, that's because we're being judged by our ministry. That's not a bad thing necessarily, but because everybody's judged by the outcome of what it is that they do. A doctor gains a reputation because of his patients. A dentist. Think of a CPA that you get recommended to. Well, people don't recommend a CPA that turns them into bankruptcy.
Right.
They recommend the CPA that does their taxes well and helps them account for things in a proper manner, and so on and so forth. Your reputation in ministry is primarily judged by your volunteers, or if you happen to be a staff leader, by your staff. These things will absolutely solidify your ability to create a thriving ministry. I think of Luke 19, the parable of the minas or the talent. And we are going to be held into account by how we utilize what God gives us in ministry and in life. If we have honest evaluation up front, then we can adjust and tweak. And as we talked in the monitoring show, we can monitor in such a way that we can adjust how we're recruiting, training, placing, and supporting.
And that can be just a little at a time. Doesn't have to be anything big up front, right?
Yeah, and that's the beauty of a system, by the way. A system brings together different component parts, these 5 habits. The synergy within the system creates the result. So it's not you that has to create the result. It's the synergy within the system that creates the result. And then your ministry scales up and to the right. Now, I can't tell you how vertical that tilt is up and to the right. It might be slow. It might be fast. It might be slow to start with and then escalate or whatever. That all depends upon things that the Holy Spirit's in charge of, not that I'm in charge of or that you're in charge of. The habits do work together, and when implemented with focus, your ministry will scale as long as you take the position of leading the team that makes these things happen. One of the keys to making this work is when you scale, you don't get to do more, you actually get to do less, but you have to have a greater focus on what's most important. That's when the synergy part of these 5 habits really takes root. I love Exodus 18, especially the second half of Exodus 18, where Moses is leading the children of Israel and they're lined up because Moses is the Bible answer man. Moses is the judge. Moses is everything to these people. His father-in-law Jethro takes a look at what he's doing, and he actually calls Moses a no-good leader.
Yeah.
Did you know that?
Yeah.
He
shocking.
says, what you're doing is not good. That's basically, Moses, you're a no good leader. Here's what you need to do. You need to appoint people over thousands. I think it's thousands, right? Thousands, hundreds, fifties, and 10. Now, the beautiful part of that is it's exactly what we're saying here. Put people in charge of these different habits, and then you lead, which means this: you got to quit doing and start leading. I have a whole seminar I do on going from doership to leadership based on this whole Moses thing. In order for Moses to become God's leader for the children of Israel, he actually had to quit doing and start leading. That's what I'm talking about here. Your focus on leadership. But there's a counterbalance to that too, Pam.
Yeah, and the counterbalance to that is that scaling upward is stagnation.
Ugh.
Yeah,
I don't like that word.
Me either. And I think that we've all been in that place at different times in our ministry. It's not a good place to be. We talked about Israel in one of the shows that we did earlier. Dead Sea. I remember going there and going, this thing doesn't give out any life. It's dead. It's stagnant. Not a joyful place to be. Counterpart, you go to the Sea of Galilee, fresh, alive. Everything is moving and everyone walks around the Sea of Galilee. They don't walk around the Dead Sea. No one wants to be part of a ministry where there's no movement, where everybody's stagnant. It's not enjoyable.
Yeah, and that brings me to this point of why do we get better? Why do we want to move from doership to leadership? The primary reason isn't for you. It's for the people that you lead. Going back to that Exodus 18 passage, Moses was quite comfortable and being the star of the show, sitting in the primary seat, having people wait to just get his ear. But it wasn't good for him or the people because he was wearing out and he was wearing out his people. And so for you and I, we want to get better at what we're doing, become a better leader, and empower people to do these 5 habits, not for our benefit, not so we can have an easy life, not so that we can quit doing things. It's just so that we can do the right things better. Moses' time didn't change. He spent just more time leading than more time doing. And that transition is really an important factor if you want your ministry to scale. As you get better, you'll lead better. A rising tide lifts all boats. That's an old adage, an old saying, but you help the tide raise and all the boats there will raise as well. Then when we reach a certain point, just like I shared a show or two ago, man, in ministry, I reached my capability threshold and my capacity threshold. That's where coaches became really important to me. Well, you're going to reach that point too. And when you do, you are going to stagnate, as you mentioned, Pam, or you're going to get good at leadership and see your ministry scale forward. Moses had a choice because he had reached his capacity threshold, his capability threshold. Fortunately, he listened to his father-in-law. And then the next day, he instituted what his father-in-law said. Here's what that means to me. He went home and talked to his wife. She said, sounds like a good idea. And so then he implemented it. You want to increase your capabilities and capacities. I can tell you this from personal experience and then working with, well over 800 pastors and church leaders. Coaching is a great way to do that. It expands your capabilities and capacities. Keep in mind that habits take about 40 days to take root. In any one of these categories, you add 40 days 5 times. That's 200 days. It's going to take a while to make these things habits. And then it's also going to take a while for you to help train others and make it habits for them. The way I like to put it is this: when we understand the fundamentals, we discipline ourselves to take action on those. They become habits. So the fundamentals become disciplines, turn into habits. The easy way to say it is in sports, we have muscle memory. So I think of a free throw shooter. They might shoot 100, 300, 500 free throws in practice before the game. In ministry, we need mindset memory. Our minds have to be set on ministry and what we want, and we need to practice over and over and over again. Recruiting, training, placing, supporting, monitoring, recruiting, training, placing, supporting, monitoring, over and over again.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons I'm really looking forward to that build gathering that's coming up, because there is going to be that dialogue and that communication and that accountability, and also the 3 online gatherings. I'm really excited about that. That's very ministry specific. So once you gather with those people and talk about these ideas, you can then have that follow up and that consistency. And then there's also going to be an app to continue conversation, which I'm really excited about that. I think so many times we go to like conferences, you hear something, and then how do you put that in practice? How do you create those habits and have that accountability and that, iron sharpens iron?
Yeah, and just remember that when something truly becomes a habit, it's just second nature to us.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think of the way I wake up in the morning.
Right.
I mean, I do the same thing every morning. I won't go through the whole routine, but I brush my teeth before I take a shower. I take, all this kind of stuff. It's
You
it's
didn't even think
routine.
about
It's
it.
a habit.
Yeah.
I could do it blindfolded,
Sure.
basically. When these 5 disciplines truly become habits, it will just be the way that you think. And then what happens is you get so much better. As we already mentioned, a rising tide lifts all boats. Everybody's going to get better. Let me mention the key. The key is this. Don't try to focus on all 5 simultaneously. Focus on the one that you're best at and get better at the one that you're best at. When you focus on the one thing and then you get better at that one thing, when you've turned that into a habit, then focus on the next one that you're pretty good at. But you're going to find 1 or 2 that you're abysmal at. That's what happened to me. Although, as you can tell by Pam and my dialogue, I know that monitoring is super, super important. However, I'm very horrible at it, really, because the way my brain thinks, I'm always thinking about the future. I'm not thinking about what happened yesterday or the week before. And so I actually had to hire somebody that would monitor my ministry well, coached her, trained her. Her name's Rhonda Petrini, by the way. She was absolutely outstanding. Here's Rhonda's job description. Rhonda, no gaps, no overlaps. That was it. And you know what? She was excited about it. She absolutely loved it. You're going to let me make sure that there's no gap. I mean, she was thrilled about it. And I'm like, thank you, Lord. Because if I have to think through that level of detail, it weighs so much to me, and it would just bog me down in other areas of ministry. So feel the freedom in your ministry to know and understand what you're best at, work on that. Where you would give yourself an F, like I would in monitoring, or a D or a C, then let somebody else do that. Find somebody, pray to God for them, recruit them to your team, whether you can pay them or not. There's people that will do this and help you with this. So I'm just picking monitoring, because that's what I was poor at. But you might not be that great at a different one. Well, that doesn't mean you get to skip over it. It means find somebody to do that.
Right. So we have an action item.
Go for it.
All right. Our action item is going to be that, like Chris said, concentrate on 1 or 2 things that you want to become more successful in and focus on that. How do you know what you're good at? How do you know what you're bad at? How do you know what you're good at? You monitor it, like we talked about last week. And then you concentrate on that, spend time, develop it, get great at it, and then move on to the next thing, like you said. So this week, I wish we could have everybody call in and tell us what's that 1 or 2 things that you're going to focus on.
Well, they could jot us a note.
Yeah, we'd love to hear it.
Facebook or Twitter or something like that. So let us know.
Yeah, and if you need to go back on previous weeks, we've talked a lot about that. If you're wanting to find out how to monitor or how to find out those strengths, go back, review some of the shows, and then you'll be able to discover what you're strong at.
We're done with those 5 habits. That's kind of the foundation for thriving ministry. But we all know that that's not enough, because we have to resource ministry with finances, with money. And I am so pleased to let you know that next week, I'm actually interviewing my good friend, Jim Shepard. Jim is a principal at Generis. He's co-written a book on generosity. This guy's the smartest man in America that I know on money for the church. You are not going to want to miss this interview. Jim is a really straight shooter. He calls himself a polarizer. You either love him or hate him, but either way, he's going to tell you the way he sees it. He's got, I think, 25 years of finance in the church world. Plus, before that, he was the chief financial officer of a Fortune 500 company, all this kind of stuff. He's a plethora of knowledge, and his heart is for the kingdom and for pastors and church leaders to do the best that they possibly can in ministry. And so, Pam, instead of you and I talking about money and screwing everybody up,
right?
I thought, let's bring in a resident expert, somebody that knows the church in America and can help all of us in our church finances. So that'll be next week. Until then, we look forward to seeing you. Let me mention a shout out to one of our sponsors, Aware 3. And I know that you guys feel and sense this significant move to mobile in ministry. Aware 3 can help you with that. Just go to Aware 3. Don't spell it out. Just use the number, aware3.com. You can check out what they have for you, but they turn the ability for mobile to connect people, which obviously connection's a big deal in ministry. And then you can see the Build Gathering there. You can go to buildgathering.com, find out more about it. But until next week, man, we hope that God blesses you abundantly and that you're able to bless others abundantly as well. We will see you next week here at the Ministry Show.